Hey, what's up everyone, CTNtechnologynews here, and today I'm doing a rumor video on iOS 9, which is going to be Apple's next major mobile operating system upgrade. It looks like it could be a pretty big deal and have a lot of new features, so in this video, I'm going to tell you what to expect. So, for starters, expect iOS 9 to launch sometime in fall of 2015. It's a timetable that Apple's done in the past, to where they'll show off their new operating system in the summer at WWDC, but then they'll actually unveil it a couple months later. This is a great system because it allows developers to work with the new operating system before it goes live, but it also gets users excited about the new OS before it actually launches. So the first big feature that could be coming in iOS 9 is a more human version of Siri. So Siri's a really great virtual assistant, it's got a lot of functionality, and it's definitely improved over time. In iOS 8 it's its best yet. My favorite new feature is the ability to activate simply by saying "Hey Siri," a lot like what Google's done with OK Google, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. What I really want Apple to do in iOS 9 is to make Siri sound more human-like as opposed to just a robot. It's sort of like what Microsoft's done with Cortana, and it makes your phone a lot easier to talk to and to get information from. It doesn't necessarily make it any more useful, but it's just more natural and it's more pleasant and it's a more smooth experience overall. Now the next thing I want to see Apple add in iOS 9 is home screen widgets. So in iOS 8, Apple sort of did a compromise to where they'll allow you to have widgets on your notification center, but not on your home screen, but I think with iOS 9, it's time for Apple to go the whole distance. Yes, widgets can make your home screen look more cluttered, but this is honestly an overdue feature, and just giving the users the ability to add widgets is one thing, but just saying they can't have widgets altogether is another. I mean, users can just make the decision on an individual basis, or they'd prefer to have the extra functionality of widgets or the more clean look of just the simple OS itself. I mean, widgets in the notification center is a sign that Apple's moving in the right direction, and I think that full-blown widgets on the home screen would be a thing that Apple should add in iOS 9. Now the next feature Apple should add in iOS 9 is the ability to default to third-party apps. So a lot of Apple's apps are pretty decent, the default apps that come pre-installed on any iPhone or iPad, but sometimes users just want to try out a third-party app, or they'll just be using an app that more fits their needs. For instance, if you want to use an app that's not Apple's default mail app, you want to get like Gmail or another alternative, Apple still is basically making their own app the default one, and I think that's a pity. I mean, Apple does a great job for the most part, but it's just nice to have a little bit more flexibility as to what apps you have installed, and sometimes another app will provide you with more what you're looking for. Like for instance, if you use Gmail a lot more than the actual just default mail app, sometimes you just want to actually have everything default to open in Gmail as opposed to in the mail app. I mean, it's not that hard a feature to add, and it just makes iOS more open, so I think that Apple should definitely do this in iOS 9. Now while I'm talking about that, another feature that I like to see in iOS 9, I wanted to see this in basically every iOS update to date, and that's just for Apple to give users the ability to hide the default apps that come on the phone. So, a lot of Apple's apps are pretty useless, honestly. The Contacts app, sometimes you won't use that, sometimes you'll get a third-party app instead. The Clocks app, just a lot of apps that users won't necessarily use all the time, and oftentimes people will just take all of Apple's pre-installed apps and just put them in a really obscure folder to where they'll never look at them again, but Apple should just allow app users to hide these apps, even if they're not allowing users to delete them fully. I mean, it's a really easy thing to do, and I really can't understand why Apple hasn't done this already. Now the next thing that Apple should do in iOS 9 is give users the actual open and free ability to jailbreak their devices. So in the past, Apple's always resisted jailbreaking, and that's because Apple doesn't want to give users the ability to download the apps that they don't explicitly approve of. I mean, it's what makes iOS such a safe operating system, and this isn't entirely a bad thing, but they should just give users the ability to jailbreak, because jailbreaking does provide a lot more features than you just get in iOS alone. Now the last thing I want Apple to do in iOS 9 is to improve Maps again. So Apple Maps is definitely a lot better than it was originally, where Tim Cook was saying that they should just switch to Google Maps because Apple Maps was that bad. I mean, Apple Maps is a lot more useful now, it's a lot more accurate, but something that Apple should definitely do in iOS 9 is add public transport directions to Maps. So this will add bus, train, and subway routes, and this was rumored to come to iOS 8, but it just didn't make it, so I think that this is an overdue feature to come to iOS 9. Something that would be a little bit more exciting is for Apple to actually add an augmented reality view that uses your camera to highlight points of interest on your screen. I mean, I've heard some rumors that Apple is actually doing this, and I didn't expect this to come to iOS 8, but who knows, maybe by next year Apple will actually be ready to add this to their Maps application. So anyways, these are just a couple features that I do expect to see in iOS 9. I'm sure it'll get a lot more improvements besides just these, and I'll be updating this video over time as more stuff begins to come out about Apple's upcoming operating system. But let me know what you would like to see in iOS 9 in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.